The following program is made possible by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Could this be the year an openly gay man is nominated for president by a major political party? I talked to two of our leading LGBTQ activists about Mayor Pete and more. The game is politics, and the game is on. Hi, I'm Kevin Mullin. Welcome to the game. In an astonishingly short period of time, acceptance of same-sex marriage has gained mainstream acceptance. But at the same time, Peninsula polling shows that many members of the LGBTQ community still feel unsafe in the region. To cover this and other topics, I am joined by Ken Yeager, the Peninsula's senior statesman from the LGBTQ community. Ken recently left the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors after 3 terms and is now the executive director of the Community Foundation of BAYMEC, one of the leading local political organizations representing the LGBTQ community. And joining Ken on the set, Jason Galisatis, former founding member of the San Mateo County LGBTQ Commission and a leading activist in the community since high school, and former, and I hope future, political candidate for office. So, gentlemen, thank you both for joining me on the set. Jason, I actually want to start with you. We referenced in the introduction some polling around members of the community still feeling unsafe in the region. I know you've been focusing on that. That's something your commission's been involved in. So describe that polling and what can we learn from that?
Yeah, so the LGBTQ Commission, one of the first things we wanted to do was to collect information and just say, get a status update of how LGBTQ people are feeling in the county, whether the county services are meeting their needs. And the results were just published in February, and I believe that's what was cited. It found that many members of the community do feel somewhat invisible, like they don't have a home, that they don't have a sense of community with other LGBTQ people, and it's been sort of a pervasive problem here on the peninsula when we're sandwiched between 2 major cities of San Jose and San Francisco. So that remains a big challenge, but I think a starker finding was that LGBTQ youth remain feeling very unsafe in the schools. And I think that was one of the principal findings, is that we have a lot of work to do to make sure that every kid, no matter their background, can feel like they can go to school and get a great education and be safe in that environment.
Well, I think perhaps we get lulled into thinking this is a very progressive area, progressive region, welcoming and so forth. Were you surprised at all when you got some of that information back?
To some extent, but no. I mean, I think ultimately we have made tremendous strides in the past few years as a nation and as a county. This county has been generally, I think, passively accepting of the community, but there's a level of visibility that does tend to lack. So it doesn't surprise me that we have more work to do. But it did surprise me, the school finding did surprise me, because we focused a lot on that.
So later in the program, I want to circle back to your commission, one of the first commissions focusing on LGBTQ
California's
issues,
first county commission.
Anywhere. So we'll circle back to some of the good work that's being done. Ken, I want to bring you in. You've got the local perspective, but also the national view, having been in office for some time and have following these issues. I'd love to compare perspectives with you. As somebody who sits in public office myself in this region, I am blown away by the amount of progress that's been made, just say on the same-sex marriage issue, just the timeline that it has taken. This really what is a condensed, to me at least, a condensed timeline in terms of acceptance, the legalization of same-sex marriage. What is your perspective on just the state of affairs with the movement, so to speak, and where issues sit with the LGBTQ community as we enter a political cycle here where we have a major presidential candidate who is openly gay? These strides are coming fast and furious, but I'd love to get your perspective on it.
You know, Mayor Pete, it seems like he's totally changing the whole dialogue, the whole narrative about LGBTQ people in politics. He has received such favorable press, that there's such excitement in the gay community is really quite remarkable. I think you're going to see his fundraising doing very well, and it's going to come from a lot of LGBTQ dollars that historically would have gone to other candidates. So it'll be interesting to see how others sort of make up that loss of funds. But I think he's going to do very well with raising money and with getting support, and will make him a national figure that we really have never had in our country. Harvey Milk and others, but no one sort of on a national level.
Right. What do you attribute his rise to?
Well,
I mean, why has he caught fire the way that he has? And is the fact that you've got such a diverse Democratic field, he's been able to actually differentiate himself from the rest of the pack by being this, gay spokesman, but with this incredible bio of languages and just his, Rhodes Scholar, military service background. Is it his biography that has set him apart here?
Well, and so personable. On the interviews that he's had, with so many people, you listen to him, you like what he has to say. He's so articulate, doesn't shy away from talking about being gay. With Rachel Maddow, the whole issue of why didn't you come out until you were 33 when the atmosphere was out there that you certainly could have. Yeah. But the fact that, again, he's just a mayor of a town of 100,000 people, I think sort of is what is making people sort of scratch their head. Obviously, very talented person, and you could sort of see a situation where he might have run for state senate, a U.S. Senate from Indiana. He wins that, and then sort of uses that as a platform. But I think to make such a major leap astonishes people. But he's carrying it off very well. Right,
and the fact that he's a millennial also
he uses that.
Differentiates. Right. Jason, you are a millennial.
Yeah.
What are your peers saying about this millennial candidacy?
Well, I think he brings a lot of things to the table, including being a millennial, and there's a lot of excitement. I think what we saw in the Trump presidency is, I think, a desire for authenticity, right? And I think people perceive Trump to be authentic. And I think in a way that I think is probably not best for the national discourse, but Mayor Pete is flipping that on its head. He's showing authenticity in a way that is warm, that is inviting, that reaches across identities and builds bridges between people. And I think that's what people are craving more so than anything. So I think Ken said it best. I mean, he's able to connect with people, and I think that is ultimately what matters to people. And the fact that he brings other identities and perspectives that haven't been represented before is really exciting.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with Ken Yeager and Jason Galisatis. We're talking about the state of affairs in the LGBTQ community, talking about Mayor Pete, and also we'll be transitioning to talking about some exciting things happening locally here in San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. So stay with us. You're watching The Game.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
You're watching The Game. I'm Kevin Mullin. Mark Simon is not with us today. He is away on assignment. We are joined on the set by Ken Yeager, former Santa Clara County member of the Board of Supervisors, and Jason Galisatis, a local candidate for office and a member of our LGBTQ commission here in San Mateo County. And we're just talking about what's happening, the state of affairs in the LGBTQ community. And we were talking about some of the national things with Mayor Pete and sort of his ascendancy, both in the media primary and the money primary, sort of the proving grounds, if you will, before we get to the actual voting. But I wanted to ask you both sort of what some of the issues are out there where progress has not been seen. So we were talking off camera actually about how same-sex marriage is frankly something of a passé political issue. It's just a given. It's happening, and life has simply gone on. But in terms of the challenges, the hurdles that have yet to be met by the LGBTQ movement, what are some of the big challenges? I'm curious, as something of an outsider here, how issues around gender identity and the transgender community have been integrated effectively politically within kind of the pre-existing LGBTQ kind of structure. And are there tensions there? Is that a challenge? Is it power in numbers when we build out our coalition? What are some of the challenges that you folks are familiar with that somebody on the outside looking in might not be? What are what's some of the underlying challenges?
Well, a lot of it is to do with what type of services are being provided to everybody in our community. We're not monolithic in that sense. Certainly gay men and lesbians, very sharp distinction. And I think the whole culture is getting a little bit more used to transgender issues, which we've never really dealt with before, and as well as with bisexual issues. And I think the services that each segment needs, particularly from county and from cities, aren't always being fulfilled. And I think that we, just as San Mateo did its survey, we did a health assessment any number of years ago and found particularly transgender people really feel like they are being discriminated against, or their doctors don't understand their issues, or services aren't available. And so I think we've realized that there's a gap there, not only in the services, but how people providing it understand our community and the different needs that we have. So at one sort of mega level, we might be doing a little better on sort of overall social issues, but it's still one-to-one when you're providing those services. And I think for a lot of LGBTQ people, when they go in for services, the expectation is that it's going to be unfair, that the provider isn't going to understand the issues, and that there might actually be discrimination. And so it just takes a lot of work to make sure that everything is going to be good for the folks.
Yeah, Jason, you concur with that line of thought?
I do, and I would just add that, we are seeing progress, but we're also seeing rollbacks of the progress that we've made. I mean, we have just seen a transgender ban, a ban on transgender people from serving openly in the military. And I didn't know this, but the military is actually one of the largest employers of trans people, singular employers. So that's deeply concerning. I mentioned youth is an area we still have a lot of work to do. Conversion therapy, really harmful, scientifically disproven processes that leave people really scarred, are still allowed by the law. And to piggyback on what Ken said about the broader services that are being offered and whether those are equitable, the same issues that we all care about are issues that LGBTQ people face, but sometimes it's just more magnified. So we care about housing, we care about healthcare access. We just want to make sure that we're not being discriminated. It's not an added layer of complication to these already complicated issues.
So the transgender ban with the military, I mean, is that straight up political, sort of red meat to the base, cynical politics at play here? What was the reaction from within the community to something which was a pretty flagrant act by the commander-in-chief?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. I think we knew that there were going to be a lot of challenges with rolling back the progress that we made with this administration. I personally feel it hasn't been as bad as it could have been. So, I think the community's done a really good job of banding together and sort of staving off some of the worst impulses. But it's sad that people who want to serve their country can't do so openly and as themselves.
So in contrast, we have a new governor, new administration here in California, where in many respects, Gavin Newsom was a civil rights pioneer on this issue, on the same-sex issue.
Absolutely.
Talk about what it means to have somebody in the highest office in California who not only understands these issues, but has actually been truly an activist on these kinds of issues, and what that means for the community when you're talking about the provision of services and sort of the nuts and bolts of how that community is being served.
Yeah, my sense is that because it's still a relatively new governor, trying to sort all the issues that need to be sorted out, I don't think he's really had a chance to focus in on LGBTQ policies yet. I think they're trying to get LGBT people appointed to commissions and to high-ranking positions. But I think all of us are sort of looking forward to the type of policies that he's going to be introducing. He's got a very favorable legislature. As you well know, some really incredible pieces of legislation are being discussed and will probably be passed. Governor Brown might have been a little hesitant to sign some of those bills, but I think we're going to find them very receptive with Governor Newsom.
Excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. We're going to have a longer final segment because I do want to get into what's happening in both San Mateo County and Santa Clara County on the ground from a practical standpoint, serving the LGBTQ community. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm Kevin Mullin. You're watching The Game. Our guests are Ken Yeager and Jason Galisatis, and we'll be back in just a minute.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back. You are watching The Game. I'm your host, Kevin Mullin. We're joined by Ken Yeager, former Santa Clara County Supervisor, along with Jason Galisatis, a member of our LGBTQ Commission here in San Mateo County, and former and, like I said, I hope future candidate for office here in Redwood City. So thank you both for being here. We've been talking about the LGBTQ community, and off camera, Ken, you mentioned some of the issues that still persist. Just the issues around healthcare and HIV/AIDS. What is happening with that battle? You don't hear, I say you, collectively, we don't hear a lot about HIV in the broader political discourse. Obviously, progress has been made, but there are still issues that persist with healthcare. In that regard.
Yeah, very much so. And I remember the days when there was still talk of quarantine people who had AIDS and or HIV positive. We've come a long way since then, and we've got learned a lot about how to manage the disease. But it's still sort of one-on-one. When you think of every new kid that is growing up. And is starting thinking about having sex. They have to be taught about safe sex practices. Understanding a little bit about PrEP or Truvada takes quite a while. Some of it is just educating medical staff and doctors who initially were not in support of PrEP. Thinking that safe sex was really the only way to go. Mm-hmm. But I think we've come to a point now, and we're sort of calling it the Getting to Zero campaign, zero infections, zero deaths, and zero stigma, where because of Truvada, you can protect yourself from getting infected, and because of the medicine that's involved, you can be undetectable for HIV. So people who are infected can't pass it along, and people who aren't can actually prevent it. So we're at a point where we can actually stop the spread of AIDS and HIV, but it still takes a lot of work, a lot of people, and a lot of money to make that happen. And I'm glad that in this region there's the support to do that, but still more people are getting infected than should, and oftentimes they are young Latino men who are having sex with other men.
And is getting to zero, that's certainly aspirational. Is that actually possible to get to a place where you see very, very little infection.
Oh, absolutely. No, and without any doubt. Again, you can protect yourself from ever getting it, and if you were infected, there's ways that you become undetectable, and so you can't pass it along. We're lucky here. In some states, particularly in the southern parts of the country, the rates of HIV continue to rise. It's a big issue in many places, and I think we can all be proud of ourselves of all the things that we've been able to do here.
Excellent. So I see a couple of props in front of you, Ken. I want to make sure we get these in here. What are these two reports? Walk us through this.
Yeah, this is the battle against HIV/AIDS. It talks about the first couple decades of the epidemic in Santa Clara County. It's been very well received, particularly for people of my generation who lived through the epidemic but haven't really had a chance to reflect back on it. And then a lot of young people who really didn't understand or even be knowledgeable of the epidemic and the effect that it had. And it talks about the Getting to Zero campaign in Santa Clara County. And then the other one, the long struggle, a lot of people think that the world's always been accepting of LGBTQ people. We know that's not true. There's a lot of battles, a lot of pain and suffering went in to get to where we are today. And I recount several of the campaigns and some of the issues that we've been dealing with for about the last 30, 35 years.
Excellent. And we're going to take a couple close shots of that. And how can people get a hold of those reports?
Yeah, they're free. You can just contact the BAYMEC Community Foundation, BAYMECfoundation.org, and be happy to send them out to people.
Excellent. And Jason, I want to make sure we get a good plug in for the good work happening here in San Mateo County, specifically the San Mateo County Pride Center, and some other work that the LGBTQ Commission is doing. Now, you're no longer a member of the Commission. However, you were a founding member, and I'm sure you are tuned into the activities of the Commission. So tell us about the Pride Center.
The Pride Center is doing incredible work. They've been open for a little over a year now. Remember, we went to the opening, and just seeing the Pride flag on El Camino in San Mateo was a pretty strong symbol of how far we've come. And they continue to do incredible work to build community and provide services. They were just authorized to receive funding from the state, so their doors are going to stay open. And to the point of making sure kids are feeling safe in school, they're having a queer youth prom in Redwood City at Box. They are continuing to do their regular programming and have done just amazing work, and I think there's no limit to what they're going to do. Of course, we have a wonderful Pride celebration every June in San Mateo Central Park. That will be coming up, and highly recommend it for everyone. And on the Commission, the first thing we wanted to set out to do was to take the temperature of the community so that we can go to the Board of Supervisors with concrete recommendations for addressing the needs of the community. So now that we have this incredibly detailed information, we can now translate that into policy that's really going to benefit everyone.
Take it into action. And Ken, other things you're excited about in Santa Clara County? Yeah,
we're doing a lot as well. We had done a health assessment that I had mentioned before, and then that made us realize that we had to put a lot more effort into our programs, and so I came up with the idea of creating the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, the first one in California, and only the third in the United States. Full-time staff doing a lot of the work, the same kind of work that Jason was talking about in San Mateo County. We just opened up a LGBTQ homeless shelter. We were certainly aware that many LGBTQ people did not feel welcome or safe in other type of homeless shelters just because of the various issues, and that would certainly involve with transgender people as well. And then we also just opened up a transgender health clinic. We found that a lot of our residents were going elsewhere for services, and we did not think that was right. And so we have now full staff happening there as well. As I mentioned, we've got the Getting to Zero campaign, and I also just wanted to mention that we fly the rainbow flag and the transgender flag every day in front of the county building as our way of showing that we are a welcoming community.
Fantastic. Every day.
Every day.
So the BAYMEC job,
Yeah.
Just 20 seconds on what that's about.
Yeah, no, very exciting. It's a new nonprofit that is connected with BAYMEC, although it has a separate board, and hope to continue doing the kinds of work that I was able to do as a county supervisor and making sure that those programs are receiving the support from the county. So very, very excited about it.
And your 20 seconds on what's next for Jason.
I'm staying involved.
Will you run for office someday?
I'm certainly not ruling it out in the future, but folks.
Sounds like a political answer. I say he's going to be a candidate.
We'll see.
We certainly hope so.
We hope so, absolutely.
Encouragement.
And district elections coming to Redwood City, so lots changing there. So gentlemen, thank you both. Ken Yeager, former member of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, Jason Galasatis, founding member of the LGBTQ Commission here in San Mateo County. Gentlemen, thank you both for being on the show. You've been watching The Game. I'm Kevin Mullin. We'll be back with Mark Simon as my co-host next time. Thank you for watching.